Welcome to Golden Recaps. In today's video, we'll be going through the 2011 sci-fi thriller movie, Limitless. Spoilers ahead, watch out. Make sure to subscribe to our channel, and press the bell icon so we'll bring you more interesting recaps like these. Eddie Morra is an aspiring writer living in New York. For the past several months, he's been living off a book contract advance and financial support from his girlfriend. The only problem is Eddie hasn't been able to complete a single page of his book. He struggles with putting together the words for his story, going through a circle of writing, deleting, and starting over. He spends his afternoon drinking at a bar or wasting away on his couch in a messy apartment. Eventually his girlfriend Lindy leaves him. While walking home, Vernon calls out to him. Vernon is Eddie's ex-wife's brother. After a little cheat-chat, Vernon convinces him to have a drink together. They go to a bar, and Vernon tells him how Melissa is doing. Then they start talking about Eddie's creative problems, and Vernon suggests he can help him. He shows him the drug he's selling. It's called NZT, a drug designed to help you access 100% of your brain power. Eddie doesn't feel this is a solution to his problem. Vernon needs to leave, and he gives him a sample of the drug for free and also his business card. On his way home, Eddie contemplates on his life, thinking he's hit rock bottom. Then he goes ahead to take the NZT. He runs into his landlord's wife, Valerie, who hates him. She shouts on Eddie, but he had lost focus on what the lady is saying as the NZT is taking effect. He feels dizzy and the drug's effect finally hits. He sees the lady's bag and in it a book about law. Eddie deducts that the lady dislikes him, but something else must be bordering her. He asks about law school, and Valerie is surprised Eddie knows she's studying law. Eddie recalls seeing the book once several years ago in a dorm room, while he was still in college. Somehow he now remembers everything he's ever read, seen, and heard in his entire life. Eddie then recommends a different book on the law that will be appropriate for her assignment. He continues advising her on how to proceed with her assignment. The lady is impressed, even attracted by Eddie's mastery of law and court. She invites him in, he helps with her assignment, and they eventually have intercourse. Eddie is perplexed by how he suddenly had all of this knowledge, and he realizes that he always had this knowledge, but just in a random mess in his head. The NZT must have helped his brain rearrange and analyze the pieces of information he has in his head, and turn them into a congruent and organized thought that he now has access to. Every documentary, magazine article, movie, commercial, and anything he's ever read or seen has now become an accessible stream of useful information. He heads back to his dirty apartment and starts cleaning. He starts writing and ends up with a 90-page preliminary manuscript. The following day, he feels the NZT's effect had worn off. He takes his manuscript to his editors. The editor is doubtful but reads it anyway. Eddie reaches home and receives a voice message from his editor praising him. Eddie then decides he needs more NZT, and he proceeds to Vernon's apartment. Eddie shows up at Vernon's apartment, and Vernon immediately knows what Eddie wants. Vernon then reveals that he lied about NZT being legal and approved by the FDA. Regardless, Eddie still wants more. Vernon asks Eddie to head out to do some chores, and Eddie complies. Thinking he needs to do what's necessary to get more NZT. He arrives back at the apartment and sees the door busted open. He finds Vernon's apartment has been ransacked and Vernon on the couch with a bullet hole in his head. Eddie calls the police but realizes he needs to find Vernon's NZT stash before the cops arrive. He finds a pack of NZT along with Vernon's list of clients, and cash. At the police station, Eddie is interviewed and gets a phone call from Melissa. The police then tell Eddie that they'll stay in contact. At home, Eddie takes another pill, and his creative juices start flowing. With Vernon's cash, Eddie gets a haircut and new clothes. He starts getting in shape and even finishes his book in 4 days. He learns to play the piano in 3 days and notices that he can learn any language just by listening to it. Eddie becomes outgoing, meeting new people and impressing everyone with his mastery of almost any field. He becomes daring, his shyness gone, and he feels he can achieve anything he's ever wanted. Eddie gets a realization and suddenly knows what he needs to do. He decides to venture into the world of stock trading. He meets Kelvin, a broker working on Wall Street, and he becomes Eddie's entry point into the world of stocks. Eddie starts reading books on stock trading and monitors the stock market for movement. With NZT he grew Vernon's remaining $800 to $2,000 in a day. The next day, it reaches $7,500. Eddie needs more capital for growth and decides to seek help from a loan shark, Gennady. Decides to give Eddie the loan but warns that he must be paid on time. Eddie takes the risk, confident that he would pay Gennady back in no time. The following day, Eddie heads to Kelvin's brokerage firm and starts buying and selling stocks. Within 2 weeks, Eddie increased his brokerage account to over $2 million. Word started getting around, and soon Kelvin calls him to say that a Wall Street tycoon wants to meet with him. That evening, Eddie has dinner with Lindy, and he tells her all the amazing things he has been doing with his life. Seeing Eddie clean up his act, Lindy is proud. Eddie tells her he just got a sudden wake-up call and decided to get his life together. After dinner, they head back to Lindy's apartment and make love. Over the next couple of days, the couple rediscovers their love, and soon Lindy tells Eddie that she wants to be together with him again. As they talk about restarting their relationship, Eddie spots a man eyeing them from a distance. Later that night, Lindy is in bed asking him to join her, but Eddie stumbles and is transported to the hallway in an instant. Eddie has no recollection of how he got out of his apartment, but Lindy sees him and asks him to go inside for a meal. The following day, Kevin joins Eddie for a meeting with the Wall Street giant. Kelvin is nervous, but Eddie assures him that the meeting would be fine. Carl Van Loo, a Wall Street icon, arrives, and they start talking. Carl's companion is suspicious of Eddie, and how he climbed up the ladder so fast, thinking it's a con. But Eddie talks his way through his questioning and impresses Carl. On a car ride home, Carl hands Eddie a stack of papers about all the companies he owns. Carl asks Eddie to take a look and analyze a pattern. Carl asks Eddie what a good move would be. Eddie takes a look and realizes that Carl must be planning a massive merger with a competing company. Carl is impressed even further, noticing how nobody could have figured that out in such a short amount of time. Carl gives Eddie a chance to restructure the deals between the two companies and asks Eddie to meet him the following day. He went out walking. Still, he finds himself having episodes of unconsciousness, finding himself in different parts of the city and having no recollection as to how he got there. He stumbles into several parties, into different clubs, meets different women, and eventually ends up in a hotel room with a model where they have intercourse. Eddie is unaware the strange man he had seen earlier is following him. After leaving the hotel, Eddie heads to the subway, where he runs into a group of thugs and gets into a fight. The NZT helps him remember every self-defense video, action movie, fight scene, and survival documentary he had ever seen, and he manages to fight off the group of thugs single-handedly. He starts running afterward and finds himself on top of the broken bridge by dawn with no recollection of what happened to him in the past 18 hours. Eddie heads home and goes to bed, and he wakes up the next day feeling horrible. He decides not to take another tablet and tries to go over the documents sent to him by Carl, but they seem ineligible. Eddie goes to the meeting sober and unprepared. Carl keeps asking him questions, expecting high-level answers from him, but all Eddie can focus on is the TV, where the news is reporting that the woman he was in the hotel with is dead. Eddie leaves the meeting abruptly. He heads home and gets a call from Melissa, who's asking questions about Vernon's death. Eddie asks her if they can meet up somewhere, and Melissa reluctantly agrees. Eddie goes through Vernon's notebook, looks up Vernon's clients, and calls them to find out more about the effects of NZT. Each number he calls, everyone on the list is either dead or sick. The last number he dials belongs to the man who followed him, and who's sitting near to him. It's the same man who had followed Eddie and the model to the hotel. Eddie sees him and runs as the man chases after him. He finally loses him by going inside a cab. He meets with Melissa, and she tells him she has also been on and barely made it out alive when she stopped using it. 2 years have passed and the effect still hasn't worn off. She recommends that Eddie stops taking the pill too, but she tells him to lower the dosage, as a sudden stop might be lethal. He heads home but runs into Gennady. Gennady beats up Eddie and demands his payments. They stumble the way up Eddie's apartment, and Eddie drops an NZT pill. Then he picks up the key, believing it to be some type of drug, and takes it himself. They then head to the bank, and Eddie gives him the money. Gennady notes that the pills made him feel excellent, and he would be asking for more soon. Eddie makes his way to Lindy's office and collapses. Eddie is left with no choice but to tell Lindy everything. Lindy finally understands the source of Eddie's new motivation. After he tells her he stashed the rest of the pills in her apartment, she agrees to retrieve the pills for him. She heads home, takes the rest of the drugs, and heads back. On her way back, she notices a strange man following her. She runs into the city park and asks 2 men to help her, but the strange man stabs both men and continues chasing after Lindy. Lindy hides behind some boulders and calls Eddie. Eddie advises her to take one of the pills, as it would give her the power to overcome the situation, and she does. After the pill takes effect, She knows what she has to do to escape from the man chasing her. She runs into the ice skating ring and carries a child, spinning her around, allowing the child's ice skate to slash the man's face. The man falls, and Lindy gets away. The following day, Lindy expresses her concern about the pill, saying it turned her into a completely different person. Eddie promises he will stop taking the pill as soon as he gets enough money. On the street, Eddie sees Gennady spying on him. Eddie approaches and Gennady says he needs more of the pill. Eddie gives him a few but realizes that he won't stop. Later he hires 2 bodyguards that follow him anywhere. He goes to see Carl, and he apologizes for the meeting, explaining he was sick, but he already won him over before, so Carl still gives him the job. He brokers the biggest merger in the city for Carl and gets back on his feet. Eddie discovered that if he slept properly, stayed hydrated and fed, abstained from alcohol, and maintained a steady dose, the blacked out episode stopped. He has suits custom made for him, all with a hidden pocket for the NZT he has. Not waiting around until his stash of the drug runs out. He goes to a chemist and tells him that he would give him $2 million if he could recreate the drug in 6 months. While having lunch, he spots the detective that interviewed him about Vernon's death. The detective informs him that Eddie is now a suspect in the model's death, as one eyewitness placed him at the crime scene. Eddie hires Morris Brandt, one of the best and most ruthless lawyers in New York. Brandt gets him walking free temporarily, saying the evidence the police had is too weak. Carl and Eddie meet with Atwood again, and they observe Atwood deteriorating health. Eddie heads back to his hotel room and finds his room trashed. Security is now a primary concern, so he buys a luxurious penthouse apartment with a top-of-the-notch security system. Later, Eddie runs into Gennady, who now has his own set of thugs guiding him. Gennady demands 20 more pills and blackmails Eddie with the model's death. The next day, Carl and Eddie are waiting for Atwood to come in and sign the merger, but he doesn't show up. His wife comes to the office to tell them he's sick, but as soon as he is better he would sign the contract. The two of them walk her out, and as she is going into the car, Eddie sees that the man who has been following him is getting inside the car with her. Her husband was sick because of the drug. Eddie meets his lawyer at a police station and gets into a police lineup. Eddie takes his jacket off and hands it to Brandt. After the lineup he meets up with Brandt again, and he tells Eddie that he's cleared of suspicion. Brandt then compliments Eddie's suit jacket. He makes his way back to Carl's office and discovers Atwood is now in a coma. He heads to the bathroom to take another pill and discovers his secret pocket is empty. His stash is gone. Then he goes back to Carl and a package is brought to him. He opens it and sees his disembodied bodyguard's hand inside. In shock, he runs out of Carl's office and hurries home. He watches the news report regarding updates on Atwood's situation and sees that Brandt is also Atwood's attorney. Eddie then hears banging at his door, and he notices from the security camera that Gennady has arrived with his goons, using metal grinders and steel cutters to break in. Stuck in an inescapable situation, Eddie steps up to the balcony. He stops himself when his foot slips, trying to remember if he had left even just a single tablet somewhere. He digs through his mind and recalls one being left in his old tin container. He reaches through his boxes and finds it, but Gennady breaks in and Eddie trips on a box, losing the pill. Gennady's boys pin Eddie down, and he shows Eddie an even better way of using NZT. He dissolves it and injects it directly into his bloodstream. He says it's more potent this way, and also lasts longer. He shoots up and instructs his men to find Eddie's stash, while he tortures him for the information. The henchmen start grinding into the safe in the next room, while Gennady approaches Eddie, but Eddie stabs him with a knife he had earlier concealed. The two struggle and Eddie drives the knife into Gennady, killing him. Eddie lays on the floor next to a bleeding Gennady. He eyes the needle Gennady had used to inject himself and decides to drink Gennady's blood, hoping to get some of the NZT into him. It works, and his brain starts working at total capacity. Now he knows how to fight off the goons. He takes down one of them, and then the other. Meanwhile, Atwood dies at the hospital. Eddie appears at the hospital and sits next to the driver. He wonders how Atwood died even though they successfully got the NZT pills for him. The driver then helps Eddie find Brandt. When they get there, they end up finding out that Brandt had kept the pills for himself rather than give them to Atwood. They find the drugs and Brandt closest. 12 months later, Eddie has a book out and is running for the Senate. He gets a call that a man representing a large pharmaceutical firm is waiting for him in his office. Eddie is surprised to see that the man is Carl. Carl now reveals that he knows about NZT. He tells Eddie that the company he owns manufactures the drug. Carl offers Eddie a steady supply of NZT, in exchange for a few favors he would later ask. Eddie refuses Carl's offer, but Carl warns that the illegal NZT labs have all been shut down. Eddie then reveals that he doesn't take NZT anymore. He had the drug tweaked and edited way back, removing the side effects. He slowly took less and less NZT until he no longer depended on it, but the effect of the drug remained on him. The modified NZT had permanently altered his brain patterns. Now Eddie's brain is fully unlocked even off the drug. Eddie shows this by predicting that a van would hit a car because the driver is distracted. Carl looks over and it happens. Eddie then places his hand on Carl's chest, saying he detects several problems in Carl's heart. Carl warns Eddie that he would be a brutal enemy, but Eddie is not threatened, saying he would always be 50 steps ahead of him. Eddie walks to a restaurant and meets with Lindy there. You're welcome to share your thoughts on this movie in the comment section below. Subscribe to my channel for more movie recaps like this one, and I'll see you in the next video. Stay well, thanks.